Hi everyone, it's Lauren. I hope you're all doing really well. Today I'm going to take you through the numerous books that I have bought recently, because what do we do when we're feeling blue? We buy shit tons of books to try and make ourselves feel better. As always, all of these books will be linked in the description box below. I haven't read any of them yet myself, so I'll do my best to try and explain them to you, or at least let you know why I thought they sounded interesting and why I wanted to read them. But just caveat that I might get some of these descriptions wrong. What shall we start with? There are so many and I'm excited about all of them. I'll start with this one, which is Weather by Jenny Offill, and I bought this because it has now been shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and also this is the pick for my Patreon book club. I let everybody choose from a couple of books on the women's long list last month, and the choice was Weather. So this is what we're reading for April and May. So I'm going to start reading this later today, actually. It's not very long. I believe it's reasonably experimental and sort of poetic in its writing. The feeling I get from it is that it might be quite similar to some of Max Porter's writing, and almost like elements of flash fiction or poetry sort of weaving into it. It seems like there's lots of, the way it's sort of written on the page seems quite fragmented. And this is about the climate crisis, I believe. But this is my first time reading Jenny Offill, so I'm very much looking forward to getting to that. I have quite a few books here that were inspired by the Women's Prize, actually. So the next one of these is Hamlet by Maggie O'Farrell, which I pre-ordered. I was so excited when it arrived. This is historical fiction based off of Shakespeare's young son, Hamlet, who died when he was 11, I want to say, who was the inspiration, or his name at least was the inspiration for his play Hamlet. I am, of course, a Shakespeare fan. I've not actually read any Maggie O'Farrell before, but I've heard nothing but incredible things about this book, and I don't think I've actually read any fiction sort of based off of or inspired by Shakespeare and his life, so I'm really looking forward to that. Next we have Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson, which I'm pretty sure I've seen on Simon's and Mercedes and Lauren's channel, and I want to say I've seen this several times and everybody has loved it. But what I normally do when I watch other people's videos is just make little notes on my phone as to, if it's a book that sounds interesting, I try and make notes as to who I heard about it from, and I tend to remember who liked the book, although I might forget why they liked it. But that's the good thing about BookTube, is if you follow people that have similar tastes to you or opinions that you trust, as long as you know, oh, Mercedes liked that book, then you've got an idea of what it's like. This was longlisted for the Women's Prize but didn't get onto the shortlist. But I do feel like the longlist and the shortlist this year seem really, really strong, all from hearsay. I haven't read all of it, of course, but it feels like it's a really interesting mix this year. And this is about an unexpected teen pregnancy, which then pulls together two different families of different social classes. But other than that, I'm really excited to find out more. And I finally decided to jump on the Hilary Mantel bandwagon and try Wolf Hall. This is so big. Like, I always knew this was a big book, but now that it's in my hands, I'm like, wow. And this is just book one. I was never that drawn to this book when it originally came out, but it was like 10 years ago and I was quite young, and I think I had heard people who tried to read this originally, people who are around my age, who found it very, very slow and very, very difficult, so I was quite put off by it. But now that I'm older, I do have more patience with those kind of books, and if I can go in knowing that it's going to be a lot of foundation work, a lot of scene setting, a lot of getting to grips with all of the different characters. I think Jen said the other day that she put it down because there were just too many Thomases. But if I can go in knowing that it's going to be for the long haul and I need to really work at bedding myself into this series, then I think I will enjoy it, especially now that the third book is out. They're all there. I can read them all in one go if I like. I'm looking forward to this, but I'm also a little bit daunted by it, but we'll see how I get on. I have a few non-fictions here, and some of them I'm pretty sure I have seen recommended on people's channels, but a long while ago, like years ago, or I might have seen them written about in the newspaper. I can't really remember, but I've definitely had them on my list for a while, and I just thought I'd go for it. So the first of these is Feral by George Monbiot, who I really like reading his column in The Guardian. I really like the way he writes. And this is about the concept of rewilding the natural, and I'm assuming urban, world as well. There's not like really a proper blurb for this, but I'm interested to see his writing in like long form, because he does write about the environment a lot in general, and I just know that I like his voice, so I'm going to be interested to see what this is like. And as a complementary companion piece to this, I also picked up Wilding by Isabella Tree, which is about Isabella Tree and her husband actively rewilding parts of their farm. So some of the land that they have, they've handed it back to nature, and it's about their journey, I'm assuming, in doing that, and the nature of conservation. And I'm just quite interested in this. I don't have land myself, but I love the idea of when we have a garden, when we have some land, being able to make it complementary with nature and rewilding areas of it at least, to support wildlife. And the third non-fiction for this haul is The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read by Philippa Perry, which I saw in Sophie Portal in the Pages on her channel a long while ago. And she really recommended it and said it was so interesting. And I am interested in the concept of child development and parenting and education and how people learn and grow. I find that fascinating. And of course, like Will and I do want to start a family, so I quite like the idea of preparing myself for parenthood. But in general, I just find this concept really interesting, and so I'm looking forward to learning this. And I wanted to make sure I got a physical copy as well, so that if it is very good, I can give it to Will and he can read it as well. I also bought the Harts Invisible Furies by John Boyne, which I heard a lot about a couple of years ago when it came out. But what do I know about it? Not much really, other than I feel like it's about the relationship between two boys who are friends when they're younger, and I believe something romantic builds between them. I mean, what is that based on, that description? But I'm sure I've seen this. I know Lauren really liked it, and I'm sure other people have as well. I've not read any John Boyne before, but this was just everywhere. And to be honest, I was getting really click happy when I was ordering these books. And I just thought, yeah, like, you're not spending any money, you're not going outside, you just spend it on books instead. And this one just found its way into my basket. It's a bit longer than I thought it was going to be. Not that there's nothing wrong with that. I don't begrudge it being long, that's fine, I'll forgive it. But yeah, I'll have to think about when I get into it, because at the moment I'm quite liking short, sharp, quick books, but very pleased to have this in my personal library. Next we have The Bass Rock by Evie Wilde, which I've heard such amazing things about. I know Mercedes really loved this book, Jen really loved this book, and I watched her interview with Evie Wilde on Instagram maybe a week ago, which was really interesting as well. And I love when I hear people whose opinion I trust really, really gush about a book. It makes me so excited. And this is about, it's about stories which I don't think are necessarily linked, but it's 3 parts. The first part is a woman who's being accused of witchcraft. The next part is a woman who has married a husband where I think there might be some sort of domestic violence situation going on, from what I understand. And the third is that woman's granddaughter, I think, who's living in the same house that her grandmother was living in, something like that. But I'm really excited to read a new author, to me, because I've not read any of her previous stuff, and it's just so exciting, like hearing about somebody who your friends really love. I'm like, okay, great, I can be introduced to her, and then if I enjoy this, which I'm really hoping to, got very high hopes for it, that means I can go back and read her other 2 books. I also bought The Foundling by Stacey Hawes, because I read her first book, The Familiars, maybe a couple of weeks ago, and really, really enjoyed it. She writes historical fiction, and that was fantastic, especially for like a first book. I was really impressed. So I just had to pick up her next book, and it's so beautiful, and I really like how the covers are the same. I know that's so shallow, but I enjoy that. It's the small pleasures in life. And this is about a woman who leaves her daughter at the Foundling Hospital, comes back to claim her like a few years later, and is told that she has already claimed her. So somebody else has turned up pretending to be her and has taken her baby away. So it sounds very intriguing. I'm really in the mood for historical fiction at the moment, and it's also nice to see, read a second book by somebody, because then you really start to see their style developing. So I'm looking forward to that. And speaking of historical fiction, the next book I have is Girl with a Pearl Earring by Tracy Chevalier. This is my first Tracy Chevalier, not read anything by her before, and I know that people have been really enjoying her, I believe, most recent book, A Single Thread, and I thought I'd like to go back and read something she wrote earlier, just to give me a taster of what her writing's like. And this is the story of this Vermeer painting and how it was created, and obviously incredibly well-known book. So I'm looking forward to seeing seeing what all the fuss is about, I suppose, but hopefully, again, finding another author who I can grow to love. And finally, another book that I bought kind of on a whim, but on the recommendation of Mercedes, which is The Heads of the Coloured People, which I saw in one of her videos maybe a couple of months ago. And this is a collection of short stories, which she said she wasn't expecting to love, but ended up really, really enjoying. These are all short stories of contemporary life of Black Americans, and I think she said the first and last story were really funny, and the rest of them were quite heartbreaking, or they at least deal with difficult, or maybe it's the other way around, I can't remember, but it sounded like it really blends the sort of hysterical humour in a way, like something is so bad that you have to find humour in it, and you have to laugh. So I just think that's a really interesting recommendation to have from her, and again I just thought, yeah, chuck it in, see what it's like, why not? So I would of course love to know if you've read any of these books, because these are all new to me, and I'd love to have a recommendation, whether you liked them, if there's any that you think I should start first. How are you doing with book buying? It turns out that's a real vice that I have. Who knew that I just like buying books? But you know, now that I never used to buy them online that much, I used to save it for going into bookshops, but now that I can't go into bookshops, it's like, well, just buy it all online then. So let's chat in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!